In the Kitchen with Bhagavan, the story of Sri Ramana Maharshi and the ashram dining hall. Introduction. The importance of cooking in South India can hardly be overstated. The kitchen is the heart of the home, a sanctuary where a mother's love is translated into nourishing meals. The motive of a mother feeding her children resonates as an emblem of her unconditional love, and the act of cooking transcends its mere physical aspect to become a devotional practice rooted in age old customs preserved and passed down through generations. If the kitchen functions as a temple and food preparation its sacred rite, together the two highlight a profound integration of spirituality and a wholesome approach to living. If the earth is personified as the nurturing mother, generously providing sustenance to all her creatures, the theme of nurturance through food celebrates not only biological sustenance but the emotional and spiritual nourishment that foster vitality, wholeness, and a sense of belonging. The Taittiriya Upanishad tells us Annam Brahma, food is Brahma. It is said that from food are beings born, by food do they live, with food do they merge. This cyclical relationship underscores food's centrality in the grand tapestry of life. The oft invoked Vedic god Agni, Lord of Yajna, is hailed as the mouth of gods and plays a pivotal role in the assimilation of food. Agni stands as the divine intermediary, uniting the mundane and celestial realms. He is the one who graciously accepts offering in Homa and transforms the raw bounty of the earth into nourishing sustenance. A deep seated reverence for Agni, the Lord of Sacrifice, explains why homes in India traditionally place their puja room in the kitchen, recognizing it as a sacred domain of Agni. Sri Ramana has been called the perfect mother because he knew how to nourish his children. Sri Muruganar once wrote of the teacher, life he placed in the food we eat and with life awareness. In his youth, Bhagavan's family had maintained an open kitchen at Tiruchuri, and Bhagavan kept up this tradition throughout his days at Tiruvannamalai. Visitors upon arrival at Sri Ramanashramam would be urged by Bhagavan to go to the kitchen and have their food. This was something that every devotee invariably longed for anyway, not to fill their stomachs but to fill their hearts with Bhagavan's grace in the form of his prasad. And what is his prasad but the dynamic embodiment of the awakening influence emanating from the Master? Prasad is a divine gift, a tangible manifestation of divine favor and the bridge between the created and the uncreated. The following account is a life story of Sri Ramana Maharshi. In this iteration, we tell it through ordinary daily encounters with the Master, centering on scenes involving the preparation, offering, and receiving of food. In the realm of the enlightened, it has been said, everything is it. What does this mean? It means that in Bhagavan's Sannidhi, the essence of his teaching and legacy are revealed in each and every moment of daily life, not least of all in the daily life of the kitchen. In the Kitchen with Bhagavan, the story of Sri Ramana Maharshi and the ashram dining hall. Chapter 3. Feeding the Brahmana Swami. In those early days at Arunachala temple, devotees did not realize that they were stoking the flames of a great fire when they put offerings into the mouth of the young meditator. Neither were they aware that the forthcoming Kartikai Deepam, commemorating that moment from the ancient past when the cosmic shell was rent in two and the pillar of fire exploded to rise upwards towards the heavens, was at that moment recurring in the spiritual heart of this nameless young Swami. Festival pilgrims sensed the vigor in the youth's God intoxicated state and saw in the stable, upright bearing of his meditation posture the embodiment of Arunachala's great legacy. But they didn't yet know what all this would come to mean. The Upanishads say that Agni, Lord of the Yajna, has his abode in the mouth. This being so, the offerings of these pilgrims were fittingly placed, for in the heart of young Ramana the inner Atmic fire burned with ever increasing luster. If hearth is home, as the saying goes, then the fire of the self is the center of the cosmos, and the alms these visitors give him were fuel for a growing flame that would one day help in ridding the world of the darkness of ignorance. So, people came to the temple and immediately sensed that this Swami was not the common ilk, and yet it was only years later that they recognized in him Kartikeya, son of Kritika, that is Lord Subramanyam. The Kartikeya Deepam flame, about to be lit in a few days in Kritika Nakshatra on the 20th November 1896, was the same effulgence given by Lord Shiva to Agni. But what an irony that they didn't see that the boy who sat before them was Lord Subramanya's very own form. Quiet corners. And yet the boy from Tiruchoyi only longed to be in the blessed presence of Arunachala, and thus found the many onlookers and adherents, well intended though they may have been, an interruption to the important work at hand. As Deepam Day approached, the crowds increased and the youth sought quieter, less frequented corners of the temple. He took refuge in the 1,000-pillared Mandapam, Vadai Thotam, Gopura Subramanya Shrine, and finally at the Ulupai tree adjacent to the Sivaganga tank. There he passed cool winter nights under the open sky and overcame his remaining resistances to challenging external conditions such as heat and cold, rain and shine. Ratnammal came and fed him under the tree, and though being alone with a woman was delicate, young Ramana did not refuse her innocent intentions. When she placed food offerings in his palms, he readily consumed them. Gradually, as attention to bodily needs diminished, his unwashed form with its accumulated layer of grime set him apart from polite society. He sat beneath the temple tree covered with dirt. On the cold nights of December, he would fold up his legs and place his head between them. Early in the morning, the layer of dirt on his body was soaked with dew and mist. By the end of December, when even social conventions such as clothing had been unwittingly dispensed with, and the boy was without any covering whatever, friends and devotees intervened and procured for him a new loin cloth. At Gurumurtam, in Feb 1897, just when it seemed impossible to escape the public view, a Devaram singer named Annamalai Tambiran came upon the Swami at the Ilupai tree. Impressed by his state, he soon became aware of the intrusiveness of passers-by. In charge of a shrine just east of the temple, he invited the Brahmana Swami to come and stay there to continue his sadhana in peace. When the latter agreed, the Tambiran led him there. Parani Swami, For the first couple of months at this shrine, the Tambiran gave Brahmana Swami Naivedyam from daily pujas, but soon he departed Tiruvannamalai, leaving no one to look after the young ascetic. Meanwhile, however, in Ayankulam Street, a Keralite named Parani Swami was performing daily pujas at the Vinayaka temple. A friend, noticing his dedicated devotions to Ganapati, confronted him saying, "What's the use in spending your life with this stone Swami? There is a young Swami of flesh and blood at Gurumurtam. He is steeped in austerities like the youthful Dhruva mentioned in the Puranas. If you go and serve him and adhere to him, your life will serve its purposes." Payani Swami, having already heard stories about the young sage, took these words to heart. He then learned that the young Swami had no attendant and no one to support his vulnerable states during moods of deep absorption. He went to Gurumurtam and upon first setting eyes on the Brahmana Swami, at once recognized his Guru. He immediately took up service and began to provide for the Swami's dietary needs, utilizing Naivedya of the Vinayaka temple. Soon, however, he realized that Vinayaka had granted him the fullness of grace by sending him a living Guru, and that his fate now lay with the Swami alone. So Parani Swami turned over supervision of the temple to someone else and began going on Bhiksha rounds instead. In time, however, with the increasing fame of the young Swami, Bhiksha rounds no longer needed to be carried out on a daily basis. Further challenges. By now, the Brahmana Swami's unkempt hair had become clotted and his fingernails grew so long that his hands were rendered useless. He sat for weeks on end on a floor infested with ants, and despite their persistent bites and stings, remained absolutely motionless. Though Parani Swami made efforts to solve the problem, spreading ash all around Gurumurtam, the critters continued their incursions. Finally, a wooden bench was procured and installed with legs submerged in plates of water. But whether ants or no, the daily routine of the young Tapaswin continued uninterrupted. As far the problems of crowd, this was resolved for the time being. Parani Swami constructed a bamboo barricade to keep stray visitors at a distance. As for nourishment, the Brahmana Swami had said to Parani Swami, "At 12 noon I will open my eyes and take food. At other times I do not want any food. When you are going out, lock me inside." And so it was the only daily noon bell, that is, rapping on the dinner cup, that roused the sadhak from his absorption, signaling the one meal he took each day. With this arrangement, his bodily frame gradually shrank and he became thin owing to limited food intake. As physical vigor diminished, he had just enough strength to maintain his sitting posture. If he tried to get up, he was often unsuccessful. He would lift himself up a few inches, but feeling giddy, would sink back into his seat again. He would try again, but no better result. Only after repeated efforts could he get up and go out. One day, when the Brahmana Swami came to normal consciousness, he found Parani Swami holding him with both arms. "Why are you holding me?" the young sage queried. The latter replied, "Swami was about to fall, so I caught hold of him to prevent the fall." Chapter 4. Days at Gurumurtam. The Swami had earned various designations since his arrival at Arunachala, but no one had learnt his birth name. Bala Yogi, Kumaraswamy, or Brahmana Swami were among the appellations given him. Soon he came to be known by the namesake of the shrine he now inhabited and was thus called Gurumurtam Swami, the Swami's predecessor. Long serving as the burial site for a great 13th century saint, Gurumurtam has an illustrious history. A Chola king, having heard the fame of a holy man at Tiruvannamalai, Deiva Sikamani Desika Paramacharya, one day made the journey by horseback to see him. Upon arrival, however, his royal steed was bitten by a poisonous snake and died on the spot. Hearing of the king's grief, the Paramacharya appeared on the scene. Seeing the dead animal, he merely tapped the inert form with his cane, and the creature sprang back to life again. Overjoyed, the king begged a way to express his gratitude. The Paramacharya simply suggested he renovate Lord Arunachala's temple, since it was by his power that the king's beloved horses were restored. As the king set about his task, he took the opportunity to inscribe the story of this saint's miracle on the temple's third prakara wall. A guardian. After his Mahanirvana, Saint Desika's remains were interred about 3 kilometers from Arunachala temple and a shrine was constructed over them. Gurumurtan, as it was called, lay some distance beyond Ayankulam tank and thus was remote enough to give sanctuary to a young Swami 700 years later who sought a quiet refuge far from the crowds in town. Since the young Swami was in a delicate state, eating very little, observing Maunam, and submerged in deep contemplative quiescence, it seemed essential that casual passers-by should not be allowed to drop in on a whim. With the arrival of Parani Swami, the Brahmana Swami now had a guardian. Together with the remoter location, the new setup promised relief from the intrusions of visitors. Fresh visitors. In spite of the distance, however, visitors continue to come, each with hopes of gaining an audience with the Swami. One day, a singer came with his disciples, sang for the silent Swami, and then, massaging the lad's feet, declared with great conviction, "One may be a great scholar, author, or composer, and everything else in the world, but it is indeed rare to come across anyone actually established in the Self-Supreme like you." When the holy man's disciple tried to touch the young Swami's feet as their master had done, the master held them back, saying, "This is a great fire. Don't touch it or even come near it." Now there is something truly rare at Tiruvannamalai. The man took leave very reluctantly, but some days later a book of his songs arrived and Brahmana Swami and Parani Swami then realized he had been the famed Vedantic singer saint Achyutadasa. Less auspicious visitors, but other visitors were not as endearing, if nevertheless respectful in their own ways. As 2 tamarind trees lay near Gurumurtam, 2 old thieves came one spring night to steal the fruit. When they discovered the young Swami sitting stone-like within the temple, one of the thieves proposed violence. Though the silent lad could easily overhear their conversation, he sat unmoved. Seeing his detachment, the second thief said, "No, brother, we shall do nothing of that sort. We need not fear him at all. He won't harm us. Let us finish our job." Interventions by visitors. When in residence at Gurumurtam, the Swami just took 1 cup of milk mixed with light food each day. This meager diet served his continuous samadhi but left his physical form depleted. Years later, Bhagavan described himself this way: I was only skin and bone at Gurumurtam, no flesh anywhere. All the bones were sticking out, and no stomach was to be seen. Days and nights would pass without me even being aware of it. I entertained no idea of bathing or brushing my teeth. The face was begrimed, the hair became one clotted mass like wax, and the nails grew long. When offered food, I simply stretched out a hand, and when something was dropped in it, I would eat it, rub my hand on my head, and return to my continuous mood. Troubled by the Swami's outward appearance, visitors often responded with gestures of assistance. One day, a lady named Meenakshi, who regularly brought food, came with a large pot and began boiling water. Thinking the lady was cooking, Gurumurtam Swami gave her no notice. But all of a sudden, she grabbed him by the arm and pulled him to the side, rubbed oil over his body, and then commenced bathing him. She worked for a long time on the tangled hair till it was clean and straight. But in the long, bathless months that followed, the hair returned to its disheveled mat like condition, woven like a basket. Bhagavan later said, small stones and dust had settled down in it, and the head used to feel heavy. I also had long nails and a frightful appearance. When visitors made continuous efforts to groom him, he ultimately relented. When my head was shaven clean, I began to wonder whether I had a head or not. It felt so light. I shook my head this way and that to assure myself that it was there. That showed the amount of burden I had been carrying on my head. Shifting to the mango orchard. By the end of April 1898, disturbances caused by visitors grew beyond all reasonable proportion. At last, the owner of the adjacent mango grove, Venkatramana Nayakar, invited Bhagavan and Palaniswamy to stay in his garden. Two small thatched huts beneath the mango trees were erected on platforms and given to the young tapaswin and his attendant. The grove's gardener was instructed to keep the gates of the orchard locked and not to allow anyone inside except with Palaniswamy's permission. This solved the crowd problem. But since those offerings food could no longer enter, Palaniswamy was obliged to go for alms at Kilnathur. The owner offered his new occupants free access to the grove's fruit-laden trees, but the Swami, out of respect for their generous host, refused to touch the trees, taking only what fruit fell of its own. Bhagavan later described how bats came in the night, ate a bit of the ripe mangoes, and dropped them to the ground. The balance fell to our lot, he said. That meant we had prasad from the bat. These fully ripe mangoes were delicious. Was that not enough? Those thatched sheds and the beauty of the surrounding nature gave us immense joy. Further changes. The shift to the grove marked significant changes in the Brahmana Swami's life, as nearly 2 years of deep interior absorption gave way to a more routine lifestyle. Commenting on his having performed sadhana during the 2 previous years, he later said that he never felt the need. Rather, he had simply sat with closed eyes in silence, as there had been nothing prompting him to look outwards or to speak. Till I reached the mango grove, I remained indifferent to the world with my eyes shut. Afterwards, I opened my eyes and began functioning actively, but otherwise I remained the same. Study in the mango grove. Another development at the mango grove was the presence of books. Palaniswamy was given access to the Tamil library of a deceased Swami, but Tamil not being his native tongue, the elder struggled with the language. While our young hero had not read anything since setting aside his school books in Madurai 2 years earlier, he felt called to assist Palaniswami. Thus, the young sage found himself reading again, encountering for the first time works of Vedanta and Hindu philosophy. He found he comprehended them with the greatest ease. Yoga Vashishtam, Kaivalya Navanitam, and especially Rubu Gita were completely familiar. Not that he had ever read them before, but that in them he discovered exact description of his own state. He knew firsthand the spiritual stages they described and thus could readily explain them to others. It was also during this period that young Bhagavan got acquainted with other Indian languages. Reviewing Palaniswami's copy of Adhyatma Ramayana helped him quickly master the Malayalam script and lexicon. He subsequently grasped Sanskrit and Telugu with similar ease. Thus, he developed a language proficiency that would prove providential in guiding the hundreds who would later come to him speaking in other tongues. More importantly, he would be able to bequeath to future generations the legacy of his own poetic works in various languages composed at the behest of the likes of Kavyaganta Ganapati Muni and Sri Muruganar. Thus, the mango grove became the ideal complement to a freshly awakened heart. With his mind clear and bright like a perfect mirror in the aftermath of long months of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, it faithfully reflected all that appeared before it. Reading thus helped him recover dormant powers of speech and granted him a newfound command of the written word by which he would give voice to the experience that had preoccupied him all this time, namely unqualified abidance in the self. Identifying the Brahmana Swami. Such were the developments brought about by the move to the mango grove. But one other occurrence demands attention as it set in motion a chain of influential events. Just prior to the shift to the mango grove, Annamalai Thambiran, the caretaker of Gurumurtam, returned after a year away and rejoiced to find the young Swami still there. Inspired to perform Abhishekam and Puja to him, the Thambiran went out to make preparations. Meanwhile, the young Swami, having perceived his intention, wrote a message on the wall with a piece of charcoal, expressing his disinclination to be an object of any worship. When the Thambiran returned, the young Swami pointed to the message, whereupon the Thambiran immediately dropped his plan. But the message had an unintended effect. Written in perfectly executed Tamil, it made evident that the unwashed, scantily clad 18-year-old Swami was highly literate and from a good family. Seeing this, people were eager to know his origins and pressed him to reveal his name and place of birth. When the Swami finally gave in, he wrote just 2 words in Roman script, Venkataraman, Tiruchuri. This was the first time anyone in Tiruvannamalai knew anything of his identity, but the revelation, doubtless born of destiny, would have far-reaching consequences as the next chapter will show.